Scott Sherman joining us here to talk about the Supreme Court, and you've said this is a hallmark day in America because the Supreme Court just ruled in a 5-4 decision legalizing gay marriage everywhere in the United States immediately. We're waiting for a comment from President Obama, who we should say, in his own words, evolved allegedly on this.
Yeah.
But to criticize President Obama, he said he evolved. But we learned from David Axelrod's book that when President Obama first ran for office, he was actually in favor of same-sex marriage, and yet went on the campaign trail denouncing same-sex marriage because he thought it was politically expedient at the time. So President Obama ran on an anti-gay marriage platform the first time, quote-unquote, evolved for his second election. Now he's going to give a speech or a statement on the Supreme Court's decision legalizing gay marriage in all 50 states.
Yeah, pandering on the campaign trail. Shocking.
Right. So,
here's
history-wise, that's how the
here's
story
something
went.
that we should do, because how much credit or how much sort of praise does Dick Cheney deserve in his life? In his public life, not much. But let me tell you something about Dick Cheney. A man has been consistently in support of same-sex marriage before it was cool. And even though you may disagree or agree with whatever position he is, Mr. Conservative's conservative, Dick Cheney,
Yes.
has consistently and always been out in front
Yes.
in the support of same-sex couples having the dignity of marriage.
When he was asked to run for vice president, he said, Mr. Governor, Mr. Bush, I don't think so. I believe in he was for civil unions. Full-fledged gay marriage, I don't know where he was and all that. But however, he does have a homosexual daughter.
Sure.
So he was a little more sympathetic to the cause because he was in the middle of it.
And we've all evolved. In 1980,
No, I understand that. But it's different if you want health care for kids who suffer from eating disorders. It's another thing to want health care for kids who have eating disorders if your kid has an eating disorder.
That's right.
So he was affected by the discrimination.
That's right.
His family was affected by the quote-unquote discrimination. Therefore, he saw the discrimination, his words, and decided that it was unacceptable for his daughter. Somebody was telling him his daughter couldn't do everything everybody else could do.
That's right. And you talk about discrimination. And normally those cases are decided under the Equal Protection Clause, the other part of the 14th Amendment. And it was Justice Sandra Day O'Connor who wrote the concurrence in that Lawrence case,
right,
who talked about, hey, you know what? This is about discrimination against people. This is nothing more than emboldened discrimination, and that is, as she said, insufficient to satisfy the test. In this case
Okay,
today,
now hold on a second. This is important, and you've been dying to get to it.
Yes.
You're our legal analyst.
Yes.
I want to give you enough time, but I also want to, because a lot of people, you're a lot smarter than the rest of us on this.
No.
And in this 5-4 decision, the 5 who upheld or I guess struck down the anti-gay marriage laws, gave the homosexuals the right to marry. But as you say, that's as far as they went. What do you mean by that? You say they could have gone further, but they didn't. Explain yourself.
They limited this to the dignity and to the liberty and to the privacy of marriage, to the sanctity of marriage, substantive due process. What they didn't do is what Justice O'Connor wanted to do in 2003, and I'm sure the 4 liberals wanted to do, which is say, look, moral disapproval of a group is not sufficient under the Equal Protection Clause for a law. Elevate gay people beyond that which just you can get married, but say, hey, they've historically been put upon. This was a discriminatory set of laws. And what we need in other things like employment and like access to public places, we want to elevate them. That didn't happen. It didn't go that way.
So they didn't elevate gays to a special protected class like minorities, like religion, like national origin.
That is right. And what happened here is it looks like Justice Kennedy said, no, we're going to stick with marriage, what we're going
We're
to
going to
do.
stick with equal rights, not special rights.
And here is what he said right here. Loving, the interracial marriage case, did not ask about the right to interracial marriage. Rather, the cases inquired about the right to marry in its comprehensive sense, asking if there was a sufficient justification for excluding the relevant class from that right. This is about marriage equality. This is about the dignity of all people eligible for it to being married. This is not a special gay rights case.
I want that's Scott Sherman, our KTRS legal analyst. If you're just joining us, same-sex marriage is now legal in all 50 states. Supreme Court just ruled 5-4, even in the state of Missouri, which had a state constitutional amendment, that has been deemed by the Supreme Court unconstitutional. You can walk into any courthouse, any license office in the state of Missouri, and a same-sex couple can demand a marriage license, sign the marriage, and be married by a justice of the peace, or just sign the paperwork, really, right?
Absolutely. And here's one thing, because I know this, like, oh, this guy's reading.
I got a break. I want to save time for questions and some calls, and I also want to ask Scott Sherman the question: how do you now overturn this? What do the people who want gay marriage banned and want to protect the sanctity of traditional marriage, where do they go from here? We'll talk to Scott Sherman about that in just